What is going on, guys? So today we are going to be going over my updated Magic Dragonknight PvP build for the Ascending Tide DLC. With how strong healing is in this update, having some dot pressure helps equal all of the healing over time that everybody has. But what honestly really brings this build together is the change from Power Lash to Molten Whip, adding some insane burst and killing potential on this class. In this video, we will cover all of the typical topics like gear, skills, champion points, and much more. To understand this build fully, please be sure to watch the whole video. Timestamps are down below if you wish to skip ahead, as well as other important links. But before we get started, as a continuation of my month-long giveaway of a $50 PSN Steam or Xbox gift card, all you have to do to enter this giveaway is to like this video, subscribe, and comment Zilla Knight in the comment section below, and you're automatically entered to win. I'll announce the winners later this month on my YouTube community post. But with that out of the way, let's get right into the build. And before we get into the build, I just want to say hi to my beautiful girlfriend, Pink. So to kick this build video off, let's go over the race. So I am a Dark Elf. I think Dark Elf is the best race for this type of setup and build. The main reason being is we needed more max stamina as we changed our food around. That's honestly the main reason why, is because this gives us hybrid max magicka and max stamina, which is very valuable for this setup, and for Dragon Knights, it's just overall an all-around good race. We have flame resistance here. It's not necessarily perfect, but it does help us, obviously, against other Dragon Knights and anybody using flame attacks. And then the Ruination, this increases our damage, which increases our healing potential, and obviously our damage that we deal. These are the two main passives on why we changed to a Dark Elf, because we got a little bit more recovery from our food. Other races that work, you may have to adjust some things around accordingly to your race. But Breton is a close second. I was Breton before I changed the Dark Elf, and just Dark Elf just had more damage. I needed a little bit more stamina, and just Breton didn't have it for me. But honestly, any race kind of works. I know it kind of sounds weird, but the race only is like top tier on like a few of them. All of them will work, but just some are just a little bit better than others and kind of give you stats where others don't. So you could honestly even make this work on an Orc and it would be perfectly fine. It wouldn't be great like this Dark Elf, but it would work. Honestly, the healing could be pretty crazy as well. So any race works, guys. This is just the best in slot race for this build, in my opinion. For the attributes, we have 50 points into magicka and 14 points into health. This is just to get us up to that 30,000 threshold so we can not die in 2 hits. That's mainly it. That's the reason why we are at 14 points. No other reason. For my Mundus stone, we are using the Atronach. This is pound for pound one of the best Mundus stones in the game. I say this on all my build videos, so hopefully I can influence and help you guys out. But the Serpent and the Atronach are the best Mundus stones for any type of build. It is almost never suggested to go a damaged Mundus stone or anything like that, other than if you know really what you're doing, because the Atronach is pound for pound. It's going to scale up with other recoveries that you have and just give you so much more value than something like weapon damage would, or anything like that. So this is why we go with the ASTRO on most magic builds and the Serpent on most stamina builds. So I am a Vampire Stage 3. This is mainly for the Undeath passive. I know some people had questions about this on my last build video on my Stand Blade. Well, this is why we go to Stage 3. So this reduces the damage we take by 30% based upon our missing health. So as we get lower health, it's going to increase our damage mitigation, so we're a little bit tankier. So this is the main reason why we are a Vampire, is because sure, we do take more flame damage. That is definitely a counter argument, as you can see here. But overall, we're going to get a lot more value against stamina builds, magic sorks, anything with high burst. It's going to mitigate that damage quite a bit. So it definitely helps us survive whenever we get low HP. And on the Dragon Knight, you know, being low health and popping up with a Coag is very, very solid and nice to have, and just helps you take damage when you get lower health. That's the main reason why we're Vampire Stage 3. For the food, we are using Red Frothgar. I don't know the ingredients on this, honestly, but here's what it looks like. It's very easy to make. It's come out in Arsenium a long time ago, so it's just a long time consumable that really nobody's used too much. The main reason for this is the mag recovery. So we have adjusted our race around a little bit and changed the Dark Elf so we can get some insane magic recovery. And I can show you, you guys see my stats. We have 1700 mag recovery unbuffed. So this is very nice on the Dragon Knight. I noticed a lot of times I was having to heavy attack constantly on my DK to be able to sustain, and having this much recovery really helps. You may have to heavy attack one time, but if you heavy attack once, you're pretty much good to go for the next 30-40 seconds until you can get an ultimate or a potion up. But on my old build with Nature Trickery and Plague Break, I was noticing I was having to heavy attack quite a bit more often this update for whatever reason. I don't know why. So this definitely really helps with my sustain overall, and I really like it. So for the consumables, we are using Essence of Immovability. These are the main potions I use, but also we use tripods as well. So this gives us CC immunity, health, and magicka, which is really what I like, honestly, because this lets me go offensive. I don't have to worry about getting stunned for 10 seconds. But tripods are definitely ones I use sometimes as well. I don't use spellfire pots anymore because we kind of had to change some of our skills around, so we can't really use this, sadly. Even though I do like being able to use this because we could get a free skill slot, but we can't do that anymore. So that is pretty much all for the nuanced things. So let's get into the gear. So back bar, we are using a Rallying Cry. This is a new set that came out this update. We will talk about some gear alternatives here in a little bit, but this is honestly one of my favorite back bar sets right now. For the main reason being, whenever we have Battle Spear active, whenever we critically heal, we gain 293 weapon and spell damage and 1611 critical resistance for 20 seconds. So fully maxed out, this is going to give you like 20-ish% of critical damage mitigation. I did a whole video talking about mitigation explained several months ago. 660 critical resistance is 10% critical damage mitigation. So about 1200 is 20%. So it's about like 25%, I would say, critical damage mitigation, which is very powerful. So think about this. If you have 2.5 race against times, that's the value that this thing provides you if you are solo. It does decrease when people are, you know, in your group and close to you and you do heal them, but it provides a massive buff. In BGs, you get like 240 something weapon damage and like 1200 critical resistance, something like that, which is 20%, which is absolutely insane. This set is so powerful. The 234 piece isn't amazing, but this really helps us with survivability and critical damage mitigation. This is, I wouldn't even necessarily say it's slept on, but it's just not gotten into the mainstream just yet. For the from bar, we are using Burning Spellweave. This is a no-brainer on the Dragonknight class. Whenever we deal flame damage, we gain 490 weapon and spell damage for 8 seconds. And this effect can occur once every 12 seconds. I mean, this is a no-brainer. Yeah, I mean, this set is very nice. Paired up with Rallying Cry, which is a 20-second uptime on it, you just can stay offensive. And your Rallying Cry is there in your back pocket, and you get the extra damage. And then Burning Spellweave procs, it's a lot of damage scaling. And we would talk about traits and all that and more optimal stuff. Swords aren't necessarily the best, and my traits aren't necessarily the best either, but we'll go into that here in a second. For my body pieces, we are using Magma Incarnate. I do swap between Bloodspawn. I do want to say that Bloodspawn is still a perfectly fine set. However, since we're going a little bit more recovery routes on this setup, I do like the extra magic recovery that the Magma Incarnate gives us. So we get 215 weapon and spell damage and 3000 armor. This set is absolutely amazing. One of the best sets in the game right now for PvP, because 3000 armor and 215 damage is not to be slept on. Stacking it with Burning Spellweave, stacking it with Rallying Cry, we just get a lot of damage scaling on this set, and it gives us some nice mitigation as well. Like I said, Bloodspawn is definitely a good option. I did test that a little bit, but Bloodspawn and Magma are the two sets I've been liking. We use a one-piece trainee for the extra health, and then for our mythic we use Majesty. Now if you're using Magma Incarnate, I do like Majesty. If you are using Bloodspawn, I do like Malakath. It's a little bit weird. I do change between both of these sometimes, but overall I did prefer the Majesty setup, so we can get some more critical damage, but also we get some nice mitigation with the Majesty. We get 2000 resistances and 200 weapon and spell damage, which will scale nicely with our Magma. It's honestly personal preference on which one you like more, but I prefer this setup a little bit more than I did with the Bloodspawn and Malakath. Let's go over traits. Rallying Cry Restoration Staff, I would suggest this be a defending staff, but I got this empowered and it works fine, but definitely defending would be your best bet. For your weapons, I would suggest maces with 1 Nern and 1 charged, but I don't have maces unlocked on this character, or unlocked. I've not gotten Burning Spellweave maces, and I really don't feel like farming it. So you're going to have more spell damage with this, but less pen, and the pen is very valuable, especially in PvP. I would prefer maces though. So like I said, 1 Nernhorn mace and 1 charged mace would be best, but you can honestly even go sharpened as well on the mace, and you'd be fine. For the glyphs, we have weapon and spell damage on the back bar. I do like disease and I do like shock. You could go a poison here if you wanted to go and drop the disease, but we do have noxious breath, which can proc the poison effect. So you don't necessarily have to run the disease if you don't want to, but it's up to you on really what you like. You could also do a absorb stamina here for minor breach, which could be very valuable as well. But I like the vulnerability and the defile. It's honestly personal preference. Your enchants matter to an extent, but not to a highest degree. As long as they're gold, it's not going to make too big of a difference. For our body pieces, we are running all tri-stack glyphs. This is very important on the DK, and especially for this build in particular. We don't have a lot of max stamina. This definitely helps us get that up a little bit higher. So for the traits and enchants and all of that, I'm running a heavy reinforced chest. This is definitely best in slot. Do not change this. Just run heavy reinforced chest. This is the most armor value. For the other pieces, I'm running a mix of well-fitted and end pin, but honestly, what you should do is 3 well-fitted, 3 sturdy, 1 heavy reinforced is what I would like. In a perfect world, when I can pick the traits and all that, that's what I would like. But hey, we're making this work with what we got. And I don't feel like trait changing something it's not really super big, but it can definitely help at the highest level of PvP. And obviously gold all of your gear out if you can. But you know, we're making this work. For our jewelry, we have 1 swift and 2 infused. We have weapon damage. This is definitely counterintuitive to what a lot of people remember. Since the hybrid scaling and changes, there's a minor brutality passive on the DK that allows us to get 10% more weapon damage. So it's best on the Dragonknight to stack weapon damage, even on Magic Dragonknights. So we have weapon damage on our necklace and a infused weapon damage on our Majesty and our Malakath as well. I had the cost reduction here because I was using Cinderstorm on a different setup, but I really found out I really like this. You could definitely go all 3 damage if you want to, but I really like this cost reduction. DK skills are expensive, and this definitely just puts your sustain over the top, where you can really survive in really stressful situations because you have a lot of recovery now. You have a little bit of cost reduction, so this really helps, in my opinion, on the class. I do like this. So that is pretty much it for the gear, traits, and enchants and all of that. For alternative setups, I think Burning Spellwave is almost irreplaceable. Plague Break can work until you can change it, but a basic setup, you can run Stuns if you don't have access to Burning Spellwave. That's a crafted set. For your back bar, you could go Data Trickery. That's a good back bar set. There's several decent sets on the Dragonknight, honestly, until you can get this. So if you needed to, you can go Data Trickery and Stuns, and that would work fine until you can get some of these sets. But Burning Spellwave is a base game set, and Rallying Cry would be a little bit harder. So what I would suggest is Burning Spellwave front bar with Data Trickery back bar would be a fine setup for any newer player trying to get into the Magic Dragonknight class, because you can farm Burning Spellwave. It's a base game set, and Data Trickery is crafted, so there you go. And then you can get Blood Spawn here, and that would be fine. It wouldn't be perfect, but it would be okay. For these skills, so this is where things get a little bit tricky, and we've changed some things around since our last build. So Molten Whip, this skill is amazing. We really need the burst damage this patch, because this can stack. Whenever we use a Ardent Flame ability, this gains 33% damage per stack we get. So this gets almost a double damage whenever we get to 3 stacks, 99% increased damage. So, and also it adds 75 weapon and spell damage, so that's nice as well, right? So if we use an Ardent Flame ability, we get 3 stacks, and the Whip tooltip unbuffed goes up to 17,000, which is absolutely crazy. Okay. So this is what really helps us push our damage very, very high. It's very bursty. The buff lasts for 10 seconds, which was a nice overall change that ZeniMax did to Molten Whip to make this a little bit easier to use. For our next skill, we have Burning Embers. This was changed a little bit. This is now a healing over time rather than a damage over time and then a burst heal, if that makes any sense. They changed this patch, so if we deal damage with this, it's going to heal us similar to something like a Radiant Regeneration I think it's every 2 seconds, every 1 second, something like that. But it's okay. I wouldn't say it's perfect by any means. It definitely helps, but it's not as I'd like it, because I can put this on somebody, put this on 2 or 3 people, But in a 1v1, it's a little bit less strong, but in outnumbered, you can put this on several people and get some good healing over time. So I do like that. Flames of Oblivion. This is your pseudo spammable skill while you're trying to proc your Molten Whip to an extent. This is very nice, especially with Majesty, because we can actually take advantage of this critical chance that we're getting with the Major Prophecy and Savagery on this skill. So since we're not running Malakath, this has some value now. So we can get some decent critical chance. I think like 30%-ish. So it's actually kind of nice. I do like it. And also it hits very hard. So it hits 3 people as well. You know, so you can kind of spam this. It doesn't cost that much either. It costs less than Molten Whip does. It doesn't deal as much damage, but it hits 3 people. So it's a good AoE damage. We changed this morph from Fossilize to Shattering Rocks. The main reason being is since we're using Molten Whip for more of a high burst situation, the Shattering Rocks helps us with a little bit of healing potential, and they don't get snared or immobilized after the like they do with Fossilize. So we don't need that because we're not trying to do whip anymore. We're just trying to fossilize into a 9-10k Molten Whip. And this healing is definitely nice, so we can get a burst heal while we're going offensive a little bit and stunning people. So I would suggest this more over Fossilize just because we're using Molten Whip. But if you change to Parallash, you'll want to change this to Fossilize. Now, this is maybe a little bit controversial, but I kind of like using Noxious Breath. Because we don't have maces on this build, I do like a little bit more pen. So this is why we're going with this. Possibly, I haven't tested the damage difference between Noxious Breath and Engulfing Flames. But with maces, I think Engulfing Flames would hit a little bit harder, and it does cost magic. But I do like the stamina cost, because this can proc the poison effect. This is why we go with disease instead of poison on our glyphs, because we can sustain some of our stamina through this. And this dot is nice. The initial damage is nice. Engulfing Flames would probably be a little bit better though, but I just like this. I like using a little bit of my stamina because I do have some good stamina sustain on this build. So this definitely is honestly personal preference, but I do like this. For my ultimate, we use Ferocious Leap. I can't wait till they fix this. I'm going to be talking to Gina, trying to get this fixed, especially with Shattering Rocks here over the next few weeks, because this has been bugging the DK for well over a year at this point. I really hope that they can fix it quite quickly. For the back bar, we're using Radiant Regeneration. This is one of the most powerful skills in PvP right now. Heals up to 3 allies over 10 seconds. It's just great. This is one of the best skills, healing skills in PvP, especially in Battlegrounds and all that. It's just absolutely amazing. Now here's a personal preference. You could do Degeneration. I like this because it's a little bit of a dot. But if you wanted to, you can go with Igneous Weapons. Perfectly fine. It's going to last longer. Overall, you're going to get more uptime with Igneous Weapons because it's going to last for 50 seconds. Sometimes I noticed that I didn't have this up because I've not been used to running Degen in a while, because I've been using Spell Prep pots mostly on my Dragon Knight. But Igneous Weapons would be a decent option, but I just liked a little bit of a damage. I may try both. I just ended up using Degen because I like the dot. That's honestly really all it is, and it doesn't cost a whole lot either. So that's why I kind of went with Degen. But Igneous Weapons is perfectly fine as well. Coag, no brainer, burst heal. It's just very, very good for the DK. Volatile Armor, they did kind of nerf this set a little, or they did kind of nerf this skill a little bit this update. The damage now scales off of your resistances, so this is kind of why Magma is kind of a little bit of a better option over Bloodspawn, because you can more consistently keep it up a little bit. But overall, this was a pretty hefty nerf, I will say, on DKs, because when we have our Volatile Armor up, this thing used to hit for an insane amount. The 500 damage return, 555, was upwards of 1800, I want to say. Last patch, it was absolutely insane. This thing definitely needed some looking at, because if you had somebody using biting jabs on you against a Stamplar, this thing absolutely melted them, and they just didn't even know what was happening, because this paired with dots and all of that was insane damage. So this was definitely an overall decent nerf, because this thing was absolutely broken before, but it's a little bit more balanced now. And I love Race Against Time. I will never not run a build with a snare removal and speed, because you need it. I can't live without it. I love my Race Against Time. It's so valuable. It just it's just great, guys. Like, if you're not using a snare removal, then you're not going to 1vx to your biggest potential unless you're using something like Iron Blood, where you are already slow in the first place. So I think this is a must, but that's just my personal preference. And then we are using Corrosive Armor. I do like this ultimate, mainly because we don't have maces, so we can get some big Molten whips when we have unlimited pin, and we can hit very, very hard. I've hit 12k whips inside of a Corrosive. It's just absolutely insane. So let's go over the stats. There's something down here. I can't proc my... Probably should go to Cyrodiil, honestly, or Imperial City. Let's just go to Imperial City, and let's go proc my Rallying Cry, because I can't proc it. You should ask Vex about proccing with Vigor, right? So let's go ahead and go to Imperial City, and let's buff up. $7,000. I think it's our spell damage or weapon damage fully buffed with light attacks and all that. Right around there. You know, that's pretty much fully maxed out damage, I would say. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the stats. I mean, recovery wise, we're at 2100 with a potion. 6k pen. You know, our pen isn't necessarily perfect, but we do have Noxious to help us with that. We have about 12k pen with that scale up. 25.5k max magic, 17.4k stamina, 30k health. Resistances with magma are like 27, 28 spell, and 24, 25 physical. With definitely defending staff, you'd have a little bit more mitigation, so you can get some good resistances. But that is pretty much it for the stats, guys. Nothing crazy on the surface. I mean, I guess the damage isn't necessarily too shabby. 7,000 isn't bad. All right, so now let's go over the champion points. So we have, let's see here, Duels Rebuff. We have Ironclad. We have Deadly Aim and Mastered Arms. So this is going to give us a good amount of damage and damage mitigation. I wouldn't suggest going with Biting Aura, because now we dropped our Plague Break, so we don't have as much AoE damage. So this definitely isn't as valuable. So we go all pretty much single target indirect damage. This will buff your dots, so your Noxious Breath dot, your Burning Embers dots, your Burning Status Effect dots, your Poison Status Effect dot is all going to be increased by Deadly Aim, because it is single target. And it also buff our Molten Whip. It won't buff our leap damage though, so that is one thing it won't buff. But overall, I mean, that's nothing crazy. It's going to buff all of our other damage. And direct damage is just direct damage. It won't buff the dots, but it'll buff the direct damage of the dots. So Burning Embers has direct damage component to it. This will definitely proc that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the blue tree. For the red tree, we have Celerity. I definitely like the movement speed on this. We have Survival Instincts. Make sure you only have 10 points into Mystic Tenacity, because this will increase the duration you have this passive up. I think this thing is just a little bit overtuned, honestly. This thing adds so much more value to having, you know, it reduces the cost of block, roll dodge, CC break, all of that by 25% if you have a status effect on you. So this will actually increase the duration of the status effects, so you get more value from that. That's why we have 10 points. Then we have Pain's Refuge and Sustained by Suffering. This is nice. It's not as strong as like Rejuvenation used to be. So it's nothing crazy, but this is just the best in slot, in my opinion, red CP that I use pretty much in all of my builds. For the green tree, this is it's irrelevant. I don't know how long it's been since I've even looked in here, honestly. A Rationer, Liquid Efficiency, and Steed's Blessing are the best. You can go Gifted Rider or more mounts if you wanted to get some mount speed, but other than that, I mean, this, like, I don't even need this, honestly. But the green tree is really irrelevant. So that is pretty much it for the build, guys. So now let's go into some gameplay, and let me show you this build in action. So the main question a lot of you guys are going to have is, how do you actually want to play this build? Well, the offensive rotation is centered around Molten Whip. So using Ardent Flame abilities like Burning Embers, Flames of Oblivion, and Noxious Breath will get you up to 3 stacks relatively quickly. How I suggest, you know, kind of a basic offensive combo is Burning Embers, Flames of Oblivion, Noxious Breath. You now have 3 stacks. Proc a Fossilize and go into a Molten Whip. This thing will absolutely just rip some hairlines off. I've hit crits up to 12 to 13k. Basic, like, you know, most numbers are anywhere between 7 to 10, honestly. That's where a lot of the damage is. If it's somebody very tanky, it'll probably hit for about 6, but that's still massive amounts of damage. So Embers, Flames of Oblivion, Noxious Breath, Fossilized into a Molten Whip. That's the basic combo. Don't be afraid to let some of your, like, for example, hit Burning Embers and then hit maybe 2 Flames of Oblivion. You don't have to necessarily hit Noxious Breath if you don't have the stamina to sustain to do so. This is why I love Flames of Oblivion. This gives you the ability to, heck, you can even use it 3 times. You don't even have to use it just twice. It's just a very, like I said earlier, it's like a semi pseudo spammable that you have that's not going to hit necessarily as hard, but it's going to do some good AoE damage and pressure on multiple people, and it'll give you access to the Molten Whip proc. For your defensive rotation, Burning Embers isn't necessarily as important as it used to be. So you want to make sure you hit that Radiant Regeneration, and your coags are going to be massive. This is really why I like Burning Spellweave and Rallying Cry together, is you have some insane healing potential. I've hit 13, 14, 15k coags on this build. I hit 10, 11k coags in PvP and BGs, and it's just absolutely insane. But typically, whenever you're taking quite a bit of damage, you want to line of sight, use your race against time, get behind a structure, and just hit that massive coag heal, and just build some distance between you and the enemy. You're going to have sometimes some tough issues, especially if you're going against a lot of dot builds, trying to keep your coags up. This is why I prefer the more of the regen playstyle, because I can actually, you know, use some resources and actually spam sometimes, and my Mac recovery will kick in and help me kind of sustain. You can't face tank on this build like you can on some other DKs. I mean, I'm sure you can face tank people that can't do damage, but people that can do damage, you're going to have to line of sight and kite and use your your buffs to your advantage. So what I mean by that is while you're kiting around structures, be sure to hit that Flames of Oblivion, get some AoE pressure, but also get those Molten Whip procs going so you can turn and burn. This is how I really would describe this build, is a turn and burn DK. It's very bursty. It's not super duper tanky. You know, you don't have access to data trickery or something like that, but you're tanky enough to really do some good counter burst. And that's my favorite playstyle on the DK, or any build for that matter, is being able to just turn around and just absolutely nuke somebody's health bar and just delete them. That's what I like. With your potions, using your move abilities, this is going to help you go offensive very easily. You can proc your potion, go into a Dragon Leap, and just go into some sane nukage and just absolutely delete people. Like I said in the skills section, if you do notice that your degeneration, you don't have the uptime as much as you really want, you can obviously swap to Molten Armaments. I may end up doing that because it does last for 50 seconds and I don't have to even swap to my back bar. The dot is nice, but I wouldn't say it's a noticeable difference, honestly, because I would actually rather have it maybe a higher uptime on my spell damage and my Minor Brutality, so I can easily use that, so I don't have to necessarily use my Fossilize to be able to proc my Minor Brutality. But both work great, but in some situations, I do notice in my fights, that looking back at my some of my gameplay, I do notice I don't have my Minor Brutality up enough because I can't use my Fossilize or my Shattering Rocks because I'm getting pressured quite a bit. But all in all, it's a personal preference, and this is just a template for you guys to use to set up your build. But in essence, that's really how you play the DK. It's always about a dot 'em up, get your procs of your Molten Whip going, go into a Dragon Leap, go into a Power Lash or Molten Whip, and you're just gonna nuke people. This isn't like a slow DK like some other people may play. This is a fast-paced, high-burst, high-damage Dragonite class, and I absolutely love it. I hope this video helps you get your DK set up in the Ascending Tide DLC. Definitely a lot of things changed with my playstyle, my build, kind of adjusting to overall how much healing there is in this patch. But this is the most fun DK I've had in quite a while, and I love the damage this thing can provide. If you want to see more gameplay of this build in action other than what's provided in this build video, I will link my live stream down in the description below if you guys want to check that out. But that's it for me, guys. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.